Sir, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to you. First of all, congratulations for taking over as the Vice Chancellor of this prestigious university, and we all feel honored about it. And now it's more than 3 months by now you have settled in the chair of the Vice Chancellor. Sir, can you share some of the ideas about what are the priorities for the Vice Chancellor to take the university forward?
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah, I think I am privileged to be chosen as one who perhaps could have some contribution to make for the society. I want this institution to grow as big as it gets. However, my priority areas are student-centric without a question. That obviously includes granting them or extending good quality education and education of international standards, and having faculty that we can boast of, and having faculty that we can be proud of, and having the infrastructure as good as it gets.
Sir, are there any priority areas that you have listed, that these are the 4 or 5 or 6 such priorities that need immediate attention?
Without undermining contributions of several previous Vice Chancellors, I think my take is slightly different in the sense that we have built such a huge infrastructure, but I fall short of necessarily calling it an institution. We first have to institutionalize things that we have gathered over the years, and I really want it to be an educational institution rather than an office in the first instance. Over the last 60 years, I don't think anybody has worked toward making this institution run during winter times, run from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening, have an ambience reminiscent of an educational institution that runs 24/7, not necessarily teaching and doing research, but also doing other extracurricular activities like sports, etc., etc. So my priority would be to really focus on making this institution really bubbling with activity of all sorts, be it academics, be it research, be it sports, be it cultural, and so that hostel boarders also sort of feel at home during nights as well as they do while they are getting themselves educated.
Research is one of the prime factors in any institution, especially in higher education. And you have served in the capacity as Dean Research of this university, and many a times you brought to the notice of the people and the faculty and the administration that we need to do a lot in research. So now that you are in the helm of affairs as Vice Chancellor of this university, what efforts are being done to promote the quality of research that is being done in the institution?
I must tell you something, that over the last 10 years or so, we have considerably picked up on research. Although research is the priority of any higher education institution, it's not only dissemination of knowledge, it's actually creation of knowledge. And several decades before, I think we did not really emphasize on creation of knowledge, but the buzzword over the last couple of decades is creation of knowledge, and institutions like a university cannot live without creation of knowledge. And so it becomes imperative that research has to be the top priority. Incidentally, University Grants Commission over the last several years has also been emphasizing on every educational institution of higher learning to prioritize research, and we are accordingly geared up to live up to the expectations, not only for the sake of University Grants Commission, but also at least creating an atmosphere within our own community that you cannot really have attained higher education without getting yourself tuned to the requirements and the beauty of research per se.
Research, as you know it better than anyone else, is not a 10-to-4 job. It's a 24/7 type of a thing. But do you think that Kashmir University has the ambience for a 24/7 sort of a research activities?
We have not necessarily focused as much as we should have on creating an ambience, creating an atmosphere that promotes quality research, but accepting, of course, certain sparks of excellence in the university, but really we want to propagate it so that it becomes more or less universal. and we will do everything possible to have that done, not necessarily in my tenure, but we would have certain things set in motion such that in next 10 years, inshallah, this institution will be proud of its research.
We are fortunate that we have a Vice Chancellor in the chair who has also worked with one of the Nobel laureates. Can you share something about your association with the Nobel laureate during that time, and how is the ambience in that particular time, and if we can compare that with ours also, so that we can benefit from your association with the Nobel laureate?
I was lucky to get an opportunity to collaborate with one of the finest individuals I have known, that is Professor Edwin G. Krebs, who we happened to collaborate with on certain aspects of my postdoctoral research. However, my supervisor was no less than a Nobel laureate. His name was Professor Joseph Avrook. As I said, there was hardly any difference between my supervisor and the Nobel laureate, and I must say I have been privileged to have worked with Professor Avrook. I think when the intellect reaches the peak and the level of commitment and drive reaches its zenith, I think breakthrough is imminent, and that is what happens with Nobel laureates. And I have had the privilege of rubbing shoulders not only with one, not two, several Nobel laureates who worked in the vicinity of the building I used to have my postdoctoral research in. I have had the opportunity of closely interacting with several of them, and I am sure that if the level of commitment reaches to a point what you see in a Nobel laureate, our research will not be far from the quality they produce. The only thing perhaps we do not have is the level of professionalism is not as much as it should be there. But if you see people moving from this part of the world to that part of the world, they do extraordinarily well. The reason is that the culture and the atmosphere is such that your level of commitment stretches to the maximum. And if we were somehow to bring that culture back here, we have the potential to be as good as they are.
You have spent a considerable time working outside the country, especially in the West, in best possible, institutions, and then you chose to come back to Kashmir. And many people have said that after coming from the West, they find it difficult to work in this part of the globe. So how did you feel, coming from there and then working here in Kashmir University?
I thought it was difficult to begin with, but I really wanted to fight it out, and alhamdulillah, I think I have fought it out. And if you learn something in the West and do not walk home having that experience executed at your homeland, then you have not actually contributed. We basically did a small experiment in establishing the Department of Biotechnology, and we did it exactly in the same pattern, both in terms of creating infrastructure and both in terms of creating ambience and atmosphere. Exactly that happens out there, and I think we have, alhamdulillah, succeeded considerably. And if this were to percolate to all the departments within the university, I think we would have done a real service to the community. What it has done is that it has inspired many people who worked in West to come over, and now you see Department of Biotechnology filled with people who come from West and are in the faculty, and they are contributing exactly the same way. And not only has it stopped there, it has also created an inspiration in people to apply for different re-entry fellowships. And alhamdulillah, we see about 10-15 people with Ramalinga Swami Fellowship, with Ramanujan Fellowship, with Inspire Faculty Fellowship, and coming and knocking our doors to come and start working in this university. I had to struggle to begin with, but it never mattered. I fought it out and fought with administrators to get whatever I wanted. But alhamdulillah, everybody was helpful, and I somehow sorted things out, and now we have a facility which is as good as it gets.
Sir, as I could guess and get from your response, that you have had tough times in establishing biotechnology department, and number of times the statutes and the rules and the regulations must have come into your way. As a Vice Chancellor, do you think that we are still caught up in some sort of the statutes and the rules which need a relook so that we become a more effective?
We are caught up in certain rules which have become redundant, but we are on way to have them modified in accordance with what the general global requirements are. And we have done considerably well over the last 5-6 years, and we will keep on looking at where the bottlenecks are. There is no choice, but we'll have to have them addressed.
Sir, besides the infrastructure that is paramount for any educational institution, it is basically the faculty that matters most. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it is the faculty, the quality of faculty. Since you have been in the university for quite a long time and you have a first-hand information of the faculty, so how do you see Kashmir University in terms of the faculty that it has?
Faculty is paramount, and I will be the last person to compromise on the quality of faculty, especially at the entry level, regardless of the pressure or regardless of whatever comes in between. If you were to employ an individual for 40 years and it turns out that he becomes an obligation for the institution, he is not only an obligation for us, he is an obligation to the society, because you would not expect him to deliver the kind of education you intend to if he was not of the quality that a university deserves. So my paramount attention would be to recruit the best possible individuals, especially at the entry level. At higher levels, you may not get as big people moving, willing to move to this institution, but at entry level, you have lots and lots of people inclined to get into the university system, and there I would never ever compromise, but only recruit the best.
Sir, the university is over 50 years old almost, and every year we have seen that over 30,000 applications are being received by the university for the PG courses, and we are hardly able to admit some 3,000 or 4,000 students, and rest of the students don't find a place. So is there any possibility that we can increase the infrastructure and we can increase the faculty so that we can admit some more students in PG courses? What is your thought about it?
We basically, as I said, are in the mode of consolidation. We cannot necessarily guarantee additional admission unless you are sure that your process of teaching and learning is up to the mark. We are in a phase of consolidation, and we are addressing where there are deficiency in faculty staff or deficiency in infrastructure, and once we get over that consolidation process, we are seriously contemplating to have intake capacities of various departments upgraded. Naturally, there is no choice but to, because we are a growing institution. In addition to that, we are also contemplating to have undergraduate programs also offered at the institution. And we are currently reviewing the concept proposals, and hopefully we come to a conclusion by the end of the year and have it launched in the next couple of years.
So, sir, to increase the enrollment at PG level, the university started South Campus and North Campus, and alhamdulillah they are functioning to a great satisfaction of the students. And university has also started 3 more campuses, one in Leh and one in Kargil and one in Kupwara. How soon do we think that these 3 new campuses are also going to come up, and what is the deadline for starting courses?
We are in the process of creating infrastructure for these 3 campuses, that is Leh and Kargil, where we are reasonably comfortable in terms of having books in place, having hostel facilities in place, having laboratory equipment in place. And about Kupwara, we were running a little late, but we are targeting 2015 session for the start of the academic activities at these campuses, and we remain hopeful that it will come through.
Sir, the hostel facilities in North and South Campus as well as on our main campus in Srinagar is limited, and only few students are able to find accommodation. Are there any programs to augment or maybe make some additional hostels so that more students can be accommodated?
We have several hostels that we have on the main campus. A couple of hostels are coming up at Zakura campus also, and we have 2 hostels coming up at North campus. We have hostel coming at Kargil and Leh campus. So we have plenty of hostel accommodation, and that apparently is not sufficient. We still are contemplating to build some new hostels as well. As regards the already constructed hostels that are in use, we are also focused on improving the quality of living there as well. So we are very sensitive about comforts of our students, and as I said, students are my top priority. We are focusing on improving their living standards as well.
Sir, this knowledge society has become a buzzword these days, and institutions of higher education are coming forward to contribute to become the partners of the knowledge society, using all types of ICTs and other things so that they can also contribute and remain visible to the global audience in terms of creation, as you said, of the knowledge. So do we have in the University of Kashmir also some efforts going on so that we can also contribute to knowledge society and also benefit from the gains that the knowledge society is supposed to bring?
I think it's imperative that any higher education institution has to be connected to societal demands and needs. Unfortunately, we lagged behind in this context, that we were not in a position to make reasonably stronger connections with the society, and we lagged behind on that, but there is no room to lag behind any further. Accordingly, it's imperative that the university has to come forward and contribute in exactly the same way as higher education institutions are desired to. So we cannot remain behind, and we are in tune with what the global requirements are and what the societal requirements are, and we are to contribute in this path as well. I think there is a committee already in place to basically work out the modalities in how we can basically get together in disseminating knowledge or retrieving knowledge from others institutions of higher learning, and collaborating with them actually, such as perspective which is more relevant locally as well as universally, is basically achieved.
Is there any idea or maybe some proposal where we say that we will use ICT for teaching and learning process so that we can also increase the quality of the teaching and learning here, at the same time contribute to the knowledge society at international level?
For universities, it's almost mandatory to get hooked up with National Knowledge Network, and we are doing our bit to get that hookup universally relevant and applicable to any stakeholder that is registered with the University of Kashmir. In addition to that, there are some individual efforts being done to have internet used to access some of the finest institutions in the world, like virtual universities at MIT, virtual universities at Harvard and other things, have their content delivered to the students. Those are individual efforts, but this has to be propagated more globally within the university, such that an ambience of good, healthy practice becomes common. We're also contemplating to have digital classrooms in place, and such that the content delivered by the teacher gets recorded, and then we would in the evening have it uploaded on the university website, such as the students can be benefited both ways in the classroom, and if they missed or would like to revise what the teacher taught in the class, he would be able to download it in the evening. At the same time, what it would also do, it would also improve upon the quality of teaching as well, so that teachers also remain accountable, because now not necessarily his student, but many other students would also evaluate his or her performance in the class. So it would serve both the purposes.
Sir, as Vice Chancellor, you may have lots of pressures to increase the intake. But as an academician, do you think that we really need so many people in higher education? Everybody should go for the higher education?
I am of the opinion that professional programs are still incomplete without higher education, let alone academics. So higher education is something which basically, in the first instance I said, is the ultimate in creating knowledge. Regardless of whether an individual goes through professional programs, he still will only be able to disseminate education, disseminate his expertise, disseminate his profession, but to create more and more knowledge in those areas also requires higher education. So higher education you cannot dispense with, and you need more and more inputs, more and more roads that lead to higher education rather than having higher education curbed.
Sir, you referred to these vocational courses and other things, and in fact there is a lot of stress this time to start courses which can get jobs to the students once they are out. Is Kashmir University also having some programs of launching some new courses which are more job oriented?
As I said, launching course is not a big deal, but having infrastructure for it is really something you really have to struggle for. We want to put infrastructure in place first, and then we would basically go in a big way and launch those vocational programs which we think is going to get my child tomorrow some kind of job such as he can make his living comfortably and respectfully. And in that context we are in the thinking process of making these shortlisting these vocational programs and creating infrastructure for them, writing proposals, and doing other exercise that is required to have these courses in place in shortest possible time.
Sir, earlier we had the distinction of being the only university in the Kashmir Valley at least, and now there is Islamic University of Science and Technology, and we also have Central University of Kashmir coming up. So do we feel that there is a challenge for Kashmir University to remain relevant, and how do we cope up with the challenge and the pressures?
The challenge is always good, and it would push us to become much better. Without competition, that's perhaps why we have remained as far behind as we should not have. I think with the advent of these universities and the many other educational institutions, I think we'll become much better. I think competition is always good for growth and development.
Sir, sometimes Kashmir University is accused, I mean not always, because we have so many good things to show, but at times because we are a public service institute, there are tendencies that sometimes, and we have seen in newspapers also sometimes, that Kashmir University is accused of not being so student friendly, though we are student friendly. What are your views on that, and how can we address this issue?
If we have been accused of not being student friendly, we have to be more student friendly, as simple as that. As I said, when I first joined, in maybe third day or fourth day in my office, I visited the hostel, and I had a look at the hostel. I saw there was some problems in the hostel, that they had some washrooms which were not working for a long time. I got them sorted out right away. I thought there was no recreation room for the students. I had it ordered right away that you have to have a recreation room in the hostel. I think we have already inclined ourselves to be student friendly much more than we were before. I'm sure nobody was against the students ever, but then if the feeling was that the students were being deprived, we have to have that feeling dropped from the list of the students.
Recently in a function, you told students, and I quote, "We should not get carried away when people tell you Kashmiris are the most talented." Sir, I mean, what did you mean by saying all that? And I mean,
what I said is that we have been downtrodden and bogged down by this idea only that we are talented, and we just sit down and don't do anything about it. And then we have somehow gotten complacent about the fact that we are talented. If we are talented, we have to prove that we are talented. As simple as that. We have not proved it as of today. How many scientists have we produced in the last 60 years? We produce those scientists only when they go out. So when we sit here, there is no reason to think that we are talented. That's what I actually meant. If we are talented, then we have to show it off. We have to qualify IAS at the rate of 60%. If we are talented, then we do not have to import our skilled laborers from other places. We have to show that we have talent there as well. Actually, all society's talent is reflected by its skilled labor class. If we are really talented, then we have to have our own skilled labor class. We do not have that. So to call ourselves talented otherwise does not mean anything unless you actually show it that this is what we are. It basically sets a sense of arrogance in an individual if he thinks he is the best, because then he thinks he is the best, he will not grow any further. If he thinks he is good, then he may strive to become best. But if he already knows that he is best, then he will not grow at all.
Sir, one good thing that has happened in the recent times in the Kashmir University, that we have established our own constituent engineering college. So what is the present position of the college, and how soon do we think that it is going to become a very vibrant institution in the university?
Alhamdulillah, in the first place, the college is operational, and first semester is complete and without hiccups. Although there are several deficiencies we think we will be addressing in next few months. First and the foremost deficiency would be addressed is in the form of recruitment of teachers, that we are expecting to happen soon, and then other support staff. There are some infrastructural deficiencies as of today also, but hopefully those will also be overcome over in next year or two. And then I'm sure once my term as Vice Chancellor is over, I think this will be a very vibrant engineering college we can all be proud of. We basically started 3 streams, but without civil engineering. There is some thought to introduce civil engineering this year itself, but as I said, we don't want to take a chance because we are short of support staff, or short of faculty. Once the other 3 streams start taking off, then we will introduce maybe civil engineering as well.
Right from the day one, you have maintained that Kashmir University is a public service institute. So, sir, to address that demand of being a public service institute, what are the ideas that need to be there, and how do we address this issue of becoming a vibrant public service institute?
There are no two things about it, that we are a public service institution, and we are out there to serve the community and out there to serve our people, including the student population. We are generally also accountable to society. So in that context, we have to obviously remain accountable to all our people in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The most important part is that you have to be open to criticism, healthy criticism obviously. You have to be open to appreciation from every quarter, and you have to live up to the expectations of the people. In that context, as I said in my first question to you, first reply, that we have somehow had not as good a rapport with our society as we should have. In that context, I am trying to build small bridges to connect to the society more than we have over the years. For example, I am also working on creating a small, upgrading this health center of ours to a community hospital, such as that we basically directly start delivering to the public as our mandate is, not only necessarily education but societal services as well. I would also love this institution to have a big skill development workshop, such as people would come and get themselves trained for 6 months, 8 months, and then go out and start making a living of their own. And there are so many other things we're looking at also to create a very strong bond between our public and the institution, such that this institution truly gives a feel that it lives up to its expectations.
Sir, the institutions thrive on cooperation and working in tandem with each other, so that they can share their expertise, they can share their infrastructure also. And in that line, Kashmir University also signed many MOUs with many agencies from within and outside the country. Have these MOUs served Kashmir University in some way, and are there any new MOUs also that are in the pipeline that we can sign with the agencies?
MOUs are very important bridges to make relationships between one institution and the other. I'm sure we have benefited a lot by many MOUs, but some MOUs obviously might not have been exploited as much as we should have. But then that still does not qualify the word that we should not collaborate with other institutions. It's need of the hour, and there is no choice without collaboration. In fact, in the first instance, we have to also learn the trade of collaborating between departments within our institution. I think science, social science, arts are merging so fast that in next decade you would not be able to distinguish what is science and what is social science. So I think people have to preempt themselves for these changing demands which would otherwise render them redundant in next 10 years. So it is imperative that all of us actually get into a collaborative mode and start working with each other, not only restricted to within the faculties but across the faculties and across the institutions, and that's the only way to survive.
Sir, as a Vice Chancellor who believes more in action rather than giving speeches, so do you have any message for the faculty and the administrative staff and then the students and the scholars?
The only request I have made when I joined as Vice Chancellor, and I will repeat that request, is that we have to be a little professional, a bit more professional. We have to work on becoming more professional. Otherwise, in terms of intellect, in terms of caliber, in terms of talent, we're no less than anybody else. But then the only thing that lacks in us perhaps is far less than what we see across the world is professionalism. We have to be proud of being teachers or administrators or support staff. We have to be proud of our job and do our job as dedicatedly as possible. I'm sure we can reach any place we want.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.